Uh, Good day, everyone. I hope everyone is having a good day. I am to myself. Please like, subscribe. Please like, share, and subscribe. And thank for all those that have been engaging me on the comments. Let's get straight away. So today I will look at Russia oligarchs and the Russian government approach to Africa in terms of Africa will now be the new safe haven for the Russian oligarchs and government after Western sanctions have been grinding on the Russian economy. Russia has been sanctioned by the Western organizations and government due to its involvement in the Russian-Ukraine war. So this has reduced Russia's money and Russia's influence in Europe and Russia's interaction in terms of international businesses. The oligarchs have also been sanctioned. So the new battleground, when you look at it, because they have been sanctioned in the Western world. Some Asian countries also don't work with Russia because of fear of reprisal from Western sanction. So the best place they should come, I think, it's Africa, because Africa's economy are rising, the population is growing. So there's much opportunity in Africa, and they want to put a foothold here. We must remember that Russia was not a colonial power when European countries were colonizing Africa. Russia avoided to colonize Africa. It never played a part. It only played a part in Ethiopia, which sent them weapons to defend themselves against the Italian. So Russia was never colonizing power. They've never had that much interest in Africa in terms of colonial exploitation and substitute. But now, because of the sanctions, they have no option. And this did not start now. When you look at the 2014 annexation of Crimea, President Obama at the time, sanctioned Russia in such certain area, so it limited Russia's way of doing business, how it used to do before. And that way, you see, immediately Russia started now reducing its its external debts. Russia at that time was a big importer of food. It started growing its own food because it knew that going forward, because of how it knew that it will play geopolitically, it will be required to depend on its own, so that when a time comes when the sanctions are levied heavily, again, they're added on top, it can try to survive or mitigate. So, now, when 2019, before the COVID year, Russia had organized a Russia-African summit. I did a video on that explaining what that involved. There are so many summits now about Africa because before there was a Chinese one, China Africa Summit, Russia. This year, December, there's America Africa Summit. But the 2019 was Russia African Summit. Russia had called all African leaders in Sochi. I remember it very well. I followed the event very well. And they were discussing military ties, mostly military. Africa, Africa is the second largest exporter and importer of Russian arms as a continent, almost 18%. So they had, military, Russia wanted to make deals with government officials, and Russia also doesn't want to be left behind this time in this new scramble for Africa, because the Chinese are already in too deep in Africa. They're building roads, port, railways. I live in Kenya, and when in Kenya, like the Chinese are overdoing it, and that's why you see there's so much allegiance from on African countries to China, because people have always been asking, we've been under colonial occupation by European countries for almost 70, 100 years, and they've never done anything. But China have been in Africa for 20 years, but you can see the results, the roads, the railways, it's crazy. Chinese, I have to give them props for that. I think that's why even the Western dominance is very scared, because Chinese are very aggressive, they are very proactive, and they're always working for to improve the image of the country. So Russia also doesn't want to be left out. It wants to take a pie of Africa also. And so the 2019 meeting, African Summit meeting, was to engage Russian oligarchs, politicians, African oligarchs, presidents, on business deals, military, nuclear power plants, mining cooperation. And it seems to have gone well, because some African countries, have already started engaging with Russia. 2019, the 2020 COVID came. So, most of the plans were delayed. Even this year, I think there was supposed to be a Russian Africa summit, but I don't think it's going to happen because of the war and a lot of things that are happening. So Russia now has focused solely on Africa. As you can remember, uh, Foreign Minister Lavrov of Russia was in Africa. He visited Egypt, he visited Ethiopia, he visited Uganda, and he visited Congo. In Egypt, he signed a $25 billion deal to make a new nuclear power plant for Egypt to supply electricity. It's the Russians who are getting that contract. Let's not forget the USSR is the one that built the Aswan High Dam. When I was growing up in primary school, in the lower level schools, we used to read about the Aswan High Dam, one of the best dams in Africa. And it was built by the USSR. So Egypt and the USSR has ties. When you go to Ethiopia, Ethiopia, was never colonized because Italy tried to invade it, but they found that Ethiopians had guns like them, but the Russians were supplying. So, they weren't able to take over to take over their lands and make them a colony. When you go to Uganda, Museveni government is a very militaristic and police state-like minded. Museveni is a former general. He overthrew someone, and the president before, I think Mobote, yeah, Mobote, and then he took power, and his country has been seen not to be democratic. Museveni country, the Ugandan government spends a lot of money on its military vis-a-vis their GDP and budget. So it's more of a politic state. You would understand why Lavrov will visit there, because Uganda is one of the largest purchasers of arms in the East African or in the African continent. So it's a very promising market. Russians are good in weaponry, in arms. Let's not forget, after the America, the second largest suppliers of military equipment in the world are the Russians. So you go to DRC, he was in DRC again. It's because of the minerals in Congo. Congo has a big population, it's still rising. There's a lot of insecurity in Congo, especially in the Eastern Kivu, where, the Eastern Kivu is where most of the resources are, the cobalt, the gold, the oil. It's rebel control. So I think Lavrov was also there to assure them that they can also provide security. So right now, things are going, because of sanctions, they cannot invest in Europe. They cannot invest in other countries in Asia. They'll be forced now to concentrate their full effort in Africa. And it has already begun. Putin's chef is called Putin chef. I can't remember his name. It's a very hard Russian name to say, but when you look Putin chef, it will bring who it is. It's called Putin chef because he supplies, sorry, because he supplies food catering contracts. He gets catering contracts from the Kremlin. Every time the Kremlin has functions, he's the one who gets the contract to supply the food. He has his own paramilitary company, the private military company, and it is operating in several African countries. In terms of to control, to fight Islamists, and also, ensure that the people in power are not opposed. They maintain, an authoritarian system. Because if you look even at the countries that they're involved, they are countries that will say politically and democratically and institutionalized, that they are down, down, down. They don't have the framework to work. Countries like the Central African Republic, Mali, Chad, South Sudan, not South Sudan, Sudan, Libya, and this Wagner Group, it's getting contract and approvals from the from the government. In fact, in a country like Central African Republic, they've been given all access. They're even a statue that commemorates a Central African Republic citizen and a Russian working together. You see, this is the kind of interaction that they've ensured. They are also used to protect the top leaderships of this country to continue looting and stealing and doing all this kind of of atrocity. Even there were certain claims in the Central African Republic that of human rights, of rape, torture, and immediately the Wagner Group changed its objective and started organizing beauty pageants, workshops, trying to create a new image. But all in all, when you look at Russia influence in Africa is not just only soft power; it's more even sharp power, disinformation, attacking the media, manipulating the media, and also had power through the Wagner Group and all these other private military companies. Currently, there are 19 African countries that host these private military companies of Russia. One of them being the Wagner. You go to Mali. The Mali proclaimed Russia now as their direct country of interaction and chased away the French. The French had to leave their military bases, and now it's Mali had 2 coups in 1 year, and the new administration now wants to work even more closer with the Russian government, and these are the kind of environment that the Russian government is finding itself interacting. Countries that are dilapidated, they have weak structures, but not all, because you can see they're also working with Egypt, with Uganda, with Ethiopia, with South Africa, and people need to understand that African countries did not, half of them did not condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because they either abstain or did not register to vote, because Russia has never been seen. People need to understand Russia has never been seen as an adversary in Africa, because the Africans have a different context of adversary. Remember, it was under British, French, and European occupation. So there's no way they see the Russians as adversary. In fact, the Russians in most African countries are welcomed. That's why you can see there's a big influence. Let's remember that during the apartheid government in South Africa, which was the apartheid government was under the Dutch, and also some other British, because the Queen visited South Africa during the time of the apartheid. You understand? And the apartheid movement was being funded. The movement against the apartheid government of Nelson Mandela was being funded by the USSR. So when you look at this, you can see that most African people have a very positive view of Russia. And I can remember when Museveni was hosting Lavrov, an interesting thing he said. He said that we will not fight other people's enemy. Us, we want to be neutral. We want to work with everyone. And he also insisted that we were colonized by certain countries. Let's say Uganda was colonized by Britain. We were colonized for almost 70, 80 years. And we forgave these countries. We work with them till today. So why can't we work with a country that has never colonized us, has never killed our people, has never, brought a brutal occupation? So, he was trying to paint that if we can work with our colonizers, why are you telling us not to work with Russia? And he was trying to paint that, we want to be neutral, we want to work with everyone, and you will not force us to fight your enemies, So that's why I'm trying to tell you that the view of Russia, people might be wondering, why is Africa favoring? People need to understand that Africa has a colonial past, and Russia was never seen as a threat for Africa. It never colonized. In fact, the involvement of Russia during the whole colonial period, even though it was a superpower rivalry between the Western world and the communist world, they actually were very active in funding against the imperialism of this country. Remember that they helped. They were helping Patrice Lumumba, one of the best presidents in Congo. Congo was a very stable country. They were helping him. Because Patrice Lumumba wanted to nationalize the minerals in Congo and make them benefit the people. So they were helping him, but the American CIA and the Western governments assassinated him and killed him. So Congo is today, the violence that we see in Congo happened after Patrice Lumumba was assassinated and killed, because now, Congo fractured into rebels, and he was trying to, with the work of the USSR, was trying. When you go to Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara is the same thing. He was a very vision-minded. He was working against the French, trying to make his country to grow independently. And then he was again assassinated by his best friend, who was as a commander, who was paid by the French. And that person became president for over 2 decades. He was ousted the other day by a coup. So when you look at how Russia is viewed in Africa, it's very different from other colonial powers. It's welcomed, and most countries in Africa don't have a problem engaging with Russia. That's why you see most of them abstained. That's why you see even President Zelensky, when he's trying to insist that African countries should condemn Russia, he's trying to insist to meet with the African Union leaders, to meet with the members of parliaments of African countries, to force them. It's not working. It's not working, because African countries have a certain respect for the Russian government. But be it as may be, the sanctions that are grinding the Russian economy are going to see a lot of influx of oligarchs and Russian influence in Africa, because now they have to find a way to invest their money. Africa is trying. There are a lot of projects they can invest. So being shunned by the Western market, which was very lucrative, they are going to be forced now to search investing more in African countries, hiding their money, because most African countries have very weak system of accountability, transparently. And where is the best place to hide? That's in a country where those systems are. And this might also be an issue, because now if oligarchs are going to bring money in Africa, it means now there's going to start influencing the political nature of African governments. We saw in Madagascar when we had an election where 6 candidates were being sponsored by the Russian government, and even though not none of them won, the candidate who was about to win, the Russian government immediately changed allegiance from this 6 candidate and immediately supported the one who won. So, and we all know that there's been heavy accusation of Russian government interference with the country's elections and sovereignty. We saw America, there were talks like that. We've seen in Europe, there's also talks like that in Ukraine. So, this also brings a very uh, paradigm shift, because also African countries must understand that the Russia that helped them during the times of the colonial system is not the same that is today. Now there is a very different context. Now Africa is the battleground for these great power politics. China, Russia, and America. It's the battleground, because everyone doesn't want to be left behind. They understand that African population is big. It's over 1 billion. There is space for development, big opportunity. 75% of the population is young. The 1 billion plus is a good market, good labor. So they don't want to be left behind. Chinese are in this game even way more ahead. Even they've surpassed the former, I'd say the former uh, colonial powers, because of the investment. When you see, the Belt and Road Initiative, it's over 1 trillion funded, and most of the money has come to Africa to create ports, roads, power, just to ensure that Africa becomes now, becomes another extension of Chinese power, So Russia also doesn't want to be left behind. America, we remember, America and the Western world, they're also trying to plan the initiative uh, of uh, of the Belt and Road, called Build Back Better World, worth 500 billion to fund to this low income country, so that they can compete with the Chinese. But the Chinese have already had 20 years of experience in doing heavy infrastructural projects outside their country and managing them effectively. They have projects in Pakistan, they had projects in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Kenya, South Africa, South Sudan, and they are managing them very effectively. So any person entering the game now will find it very hard, because now Chinese have experience in doing these infrastructural projects. But I wait to see how it will go, because it's no secret that now, Africa will be the new playground for this great power politics. I wait to see how it goes, and how these countries that are welcoming Russia, how they will fare. I'll keep you guys informed and let you guys know how the geopolitical structure is working. And thank you for all those who've been, engaging me and talking to me. I'm really humbled, and I'm really happy, and I'm also really happy to be, to know that, what I share, it's relevant, and it's good information. Thank you guys for all those who've been supporting. Please subscribe, share, and like. Thank you. Cheers.